adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into the mechanics and design of D&D classes and subclasses in order to help you get the most out of your experience with them. Today, it's been a bit of time since I've done one of these, and that's mostly because I wanted to work my way through the psionic options from now last month's Unearthed Arcana, and the third psionic option I haven't gotten to yet is a sorcerer's origin. And I can't do that until I talk about the sorcerer themselves. So today's episode is actually going to be covering not only the sorcerer itself, but also the two sorceress origins in the PHB, mostly because the sorcerer itself doesn't have a ton of options as far as character like abilities. The thing that really kind of differentiates the sorcerers other than their origin is the spells they choose. So I can actually get through all this stuff relatively quickly because there's just not a ton of it. I think after level, either 4 or 6, the sorcerer just stops gaining new abilities. The base sorcerer. And everything else is just new spells and things like that. So, without any further ado, let's jump into the sorcerer. The sorcerer itself. I'm gonna close my keyboard tray here. The sorcerer itself is one of the 3 arcane spellcasting classes. And the sorcerer, spellcasters in general, throughout the D&D, have had kind of an interesting time differentiating themselves. Lore-wise, they couldn't be more different, but mechanically, they kind of all played the same with a few kind of strange changes. Like in earlier editions, like second and I believe the third as well, like wizards had to prepare a spell for each slot, which meant if you had 4 first level slots, you could prepare, and maybe you wanted magic missile and burning hands. You could prepare to 2 magic missiles and to 2 burning hands, or 3 and 1, whatever. But that's what you were limited to. If you used all your magic missiles for the day and got to another situation where you needed it, you couldn't. You had 2 more slots that for first level spells, but they were filled with different spells. Sorcerers, on the other hand, would learn less spells than a wizard, but they'd have access to all of them and be able to just kind of pick a slot and cast a spell for that slot. Very similar to how 5th edition Magic works across the board. So when we get to 5th edition, where the idea of each different character class is they need to do something different. They need to have something unique about them, so that a fighter feels different than a ranger. A paladin feels different than a barbarian. And those features should show up within the first 2 levels. Because everyone now can cast spells very similarly to how sorcerers could, they had to change some stuff, and they actually shifted some stuff that used to be available to all spellcasters through feats, and made them exclusively sorcerer options, because they just fit with sorcerers. So sorcerers themselves are innate spellcasters is a great way to put it. They are people that didn't really have to study or do something to get their magic. It's just an innate part of them. Think more along the lines of Harry Potter, before he got to Hogwarts, where you just have this kind of innate magical talent, and it sometimes kind of leaks out and does stuff. There's actually a specific origin that is built around the idea that sometimes the magic doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So that's kind of what sorcerers are, because they are kind of intrinsic in an innate spellcasters, and they do a lot of it through intuition, rather than study. Their spellcasting is built to be much more flexible, whereas wizards are very much, I studied, I learned, and I mastered my crafts. Craft through study and patience and determination. Sorcerers are much more about the idea of, I have this power, I'm going to learn how to control it by doing it, and I'm going to manipulate it based on what I see. Most of the abilities are going to kind of fit into that idea of the things they do are innate. They're intuitive. They just kind of do it. And the key thing about the growth of a sorcerer is not so much them becoming more powerful, even though that's what happens. It's more of an idea of they learn to control and access more of the power that's already inside them. So let's get started with the sorcerer themselves. Now, the unique thing about sorcerers is they actually choose their subclass, which is called Sorcerer's Origin, right at level 1. Which I think they're the only one. I think wizards get it at like level 2. Warlocks are the other ones that get it right at level 1. So right from the get-go, a sorcerer is going to be able to differentiate themselves even from other sorcerers, which is nice. So the first thing that they get is their spellcasting. They learn cantrips, just like other spellcasters. They learn spells, just like other spellcasters. And they are a full caster, so they have the same number of spell slots as any other full caster. Now, I don't think I haven't gone through the entire list of spells, but I don't believe there are any spells that are on the sorcerer's spell list that aren't on the wizard spell list, and vice versa. There might be, a couple, but for the most part, sorcerers and wizards have access to almost identical spell lists. The way they use them is going to be the thing that differentiates them. Spellcasting is spellcasting. It's the same thing. They're charisma-based spellcasters. They can use for foci. They have spells known and all that stuff. If you've done any spellcaster, it's always the same. Their origin is the other thing that they get at level 1. We'll cover that at the end, because that's how it is in the book. And their origin is basically where they get their magic from. You have draconic bloodline and wild magic, and I'll go into more details when we get to them. But the basics of it are: one, the draconic bloodline they get literally because they have some dragon blood in them from an ancestor, many generations ago, hooking up with a dragon, which is not uncommon in the Forgotten Realms and D&D in general. Dragons have this thing where they like to turn into humans and then sire children. So that's one way. The other way is wild magic, which is just kind of, they were kind of not really blessed, but kind of infected almost with magic, and it sometimes just comes out. So again, we'll get into more details, but that's their first level, is basically just picking your origin and picking your spells. So as far as building a sorcerer, building spellcasters in general takes forever. Yeah, for first level, for a sorcerer, really isn't that horrible. And again, that's a defining feature of the class. They are spellcasters. The second defining thing of their class um, is what's called the font of magic, and this is where that very kind of firing from the hip, intuitive magic comes into play. At second level, you get this thing called the font of magic, and what it does is it basically gives you what are called sorcery points. Um, as you get higher and higher, you basically have this is the same number of sorcery points as you have levels in the sorcerer class. So at second level, you have to 2, 10th level, you have to 10. And the basics of it are sorcery points can be used to create additional spell slots, basically. You um, they call that section is called the flexible casting, and it basically means if you I actually just had this in one of my games. A sorcerer cast a fifth level spell, which they only had one slots for, so they actually used 7 sorcery points in order to get another fifth level spell slot to cast another fifth level spell. Um, uh, the way it works is basically, I believe it's as a bonus action. Yeah, so as a bonus action on their turn, they can convert unused sorcery points into spell slots with a first level spell slot costing 2 sorcery points. Second is 3, third is 5, fourth is 6, 5 is 7. The reason there's a jump between second and the third is the third level spells are a massive upgrade from for first and second level. That's where you start getting things like a counter spell, for fireball, a lightning bolt. They've vastly changed how the game works, and so making those and everything above that a little more expensive is a balancing feature. Um, Now, the one limiting factor about creating these spell slots is they can't create a spell slot higher than fifth level. So you don't have to worry about, a 19th level sorcerer double casting the 9th level spells or anything like that. They're still limited to one 9th level spell a day. But again, this gives them a lot of flexibility in their casting and things like that. On the other side, you can actually create sorcery points from spell slots. You suspend a spell slot and you get that many sorcery points back in the same way, or technically the reverse way you would could create one. So if you burn a second level spell slot, you can get 3 sorcery points back. If you burn a fourth level spell slot, you can get 6 sorcery points back. And this, again, really fits into that idea of sorcerers are very intuitive in what they're doing. In this particular fight, you're just kind of spamming, second level spells. You need some more, but burn a higher level spell slot, or and then convert it into lower ones. Or on the flip side, you need another fourth level spell slot. Burn 2 second level spell slots. It'll take you a couple turns to do it. But it's definitely a way to modify how your spells work. And it really makes the sorcerer unique in the idea that they, as wizards and get to higher levels, a lot of times they just start kind of neglecting their lower level spell slots because they have much better spells at the top levels. Sorcerers never have to neglect low level spell slots because sorcery points are something you're always using. If not for this, then for the next thing we're going to talk about. The next thing, and this is one of the few times in the 5th edition where what I would consider kind of a defining feature of these class is introduced at the third level, and I think that probably has something to do with the fact that they chose their subclass at the first level, so they needed to give some other kind of defining aspect to the third level. Third level, sorcerers get what's called meta magic. This is the other half of the kind of intuitive casting that they do. Flexible casting gives them the ability to only have to cast spells in the slots that are most useful for that situation. Meta magic lets them change how the spells work on the fly. But basically, the way meta magic works is anytime you cast a spell, whether it's a cantrip all the way up to a 9th level spell, you can add a meta magic option to that spell to change how it functions. I'll go through the whole list in just a second here, but it really changes how the caster plays, and based on the meta magics you choose, you will probably choose different spells. If you choose one that makes it easier for you to make attack rolls, you'll probably choose more attack rolls as spells. If you make one that makes it harder to make saving throws, then you'll choose more saving throw based spells, and so on and so forth. It's an incredibly useful the thing, and again, a lot of these metamatic options used to be for feats you could take if you were any kind of spellcaster in like the third edition. And what they would do is it would increase the level of the spell. So if you wanted to, do a long spell on a firebolt, that would increase the spell level by the 3 levels. You'd have to burn a higher level slot to do that. The things like that. So this, I think, is a much better way to do it. And again, it makes those sorcery points super useful. At the second level, you get to choose two of these, and then at the 10th and 17th, you get to choose an additional one at each of those level. So a max level sorcerer will have a total of 4 meta magic options, which again means that even if you have 2 wild mage sorcerers in your party, depending on the meta magic they choose, they can still play really differently, which I like. I like the customizability. Any class where they give you a list of options that you can choose instead of, well, this is what you get at every level. I like that. I think it just adds a little more dynamics to the class. So let's talk about meta magics. First one is Careful Spell. And this basically means you can burn a sorcery point and choose a number of creatures up to your charisma modifier. And those creatures automatically save against your spell. This is really useful for things like Fireball and the really nice high-level stuff like Firestorm and stuff, where if your party's in the middle of a big fight, and you just need to do widespread damage, Careful Spell can be really useful, especially if you could combine it with things like rogues and monks, and I think even high-level rangers get what's called evasion, where if they make their save, they take no damage. So when you could combine that with Careful Spell, you can cast a really powerful fireball spell or something even worse, like Meteor or something, and not have to worry about hurting your allies or anything. You just Careful Spell it, and you kind of just move it around. Somewhat similar to the Evoker Wizard's ability to bend spells, but instead of just removing them from it, it makes them save. So again, if you take that, you're probably going to take a lot of area spells, and then not worry so much when you're accidentally hitting your allies. They're not going to take anywhere near as much damage. The distance spell. Basically, any spell that has a range of 5 feet or more, so this doesn't work on touch-based spells. You can suspend a sorcery point to double the range of the spells. And if you cast a spell that has a range of touch, you can spend a sorcery point to make the range of that spell 30 feet. This is the perfect build for what I call a spell sniper. And I call it that because there's actually a feat that's called spell sniper, I believe. Let me look it up before I say the wrong thing. Yep, it's called Spell Sniper. And what it does is it actually works very similar to the Sharpshooter feat, where you can ignore half and the 3/4 cover. It doesn't give you the additional damage, but what it does do is it doubles the range of any spells that have a range. So when you could combine that with distant spells, distant spell, something like a firebolt normally has a range of 120 feet. With the distance spell, it turns it to 240. With spell sniper, that turns it into 460 feet. You can shoot someone with a firebolt, which even though it is a cantrip, it does 1d10 damage plus additional d10 every time the cantrip levels, which is 5, 11, I think, and 17. So a high level sorcerer would be able to do 4d10 damage with a cantrip from 460 feet away. If you wanted to create a really cool kind of magical sniper character, that you could even go as far as say that there's a spell focus as a staff, and instead of like casting it like and I hold it like this, they just kind of pop the end on the shoulder and lift it up and cast from the end of the staff like this, and have your own sniper character. So again, can be really useful, and again for to touch spells as well. Some really powerful spells, their limiting factor is you have to touch the creature. If you can now do it from the 30 feet away, things like blight. I can't remember if that's a touch. There's quite a few that are really bad, but you have to get really close. With this, you don't need to. In powered spell. Is basically when you roll the damage for your spell. You can burn a sorcery point and re-roll as many of the damage dice as you want up to your charisma modifier. This is one of the unique meta magics because you can actually use it if you've already used a meta magic on a spell. Remember, I said earlier you can only use one meta magic option per spell. This one allows you to use another. And again, massively useful. You can turn, a fireball is what, 8d6, I believe it is. And if you roll ones on 4 of those d6s, that really sucks. You've just lost to 20 damage per target. But if you can re-roll those, well, now you may have just added 15 or 20 damage to the roll. Again, massively useful. And then the nice thing about that particular one is you don't have to use it until you see the damage you rolled. So if you did really good, don't worry about rolling it. If you did really poorly, and power it up and just waste. A really good spell. If you want to be doing consistently high damage. Extend spell. Whenever you have a cast a spell as a duration of 1 minute or a little longer, you can suspend a sorcery point to double its duration to a maximum of 24 hours. Again, really useful for a number of spells. Mage Armories is one that tends to be simply because you can cast it at night, um, get a full 8 hours of sleep, and then for the first 8 hours of the day, you still have your mage armor on, which is cool. The things like that. I have to remember if mage armors. I don't believe mage armor's concentration. Something like that wouldn't work on a concentration spell because if you go unconscious, you lose concentration. But any non-concentration spell with a duration, extended spell can be really, really useful. And even ones that are concentration, if it's something that's useful that you need to just keep going, like a lot of the kind of buff kind of spells will only last for a minute. Doubling that can mean the difference between having to recast it for the next fight or being able to just kind of go through to two fights with one spell. Heightens this spell. This is the one I talked about where it makes it harder to save against the spell. Specifically, you can spend the 3 sorcery points to make one creature have the disadvantage on their saving throw against this spell. Again, if you really need something to stick, like maybe you're doing a dominate beast or dominate person, and you really need this to work because that particular person is just going to wipe out the party. Having a heightened spell is a life saver. Those really important spell casts, or even if you have someone that just keeps resisting your spells on a regular basis, using heightened spell is a nice way to get past a really high dex save or something like that. Quicken spell. This is probably the most common meta magic option to use, just because it's massively useful. Quicken spell basically is any spell that has a casting time of 1 action. You can spend 2 sorcery points to make it 1 bonus action. And this is one that has actually caused issues with certain games, and that to the point where they actually have a rule in here specifically made for this, which is if you use a bonus action to cast a spell, only you can only cast 1 leveled spell if you use your bonus action to cast a spell. So this basically means if you use Quicken Spell, and you want to basically cast 2 spells in a turn, one of them can be a fireball or to dominate a person or something like that, and the other one can be a cantrip. Which is still really useful, especially if you have another thing you need to use your action to do. Like maybe you need to stabilize an ally, but you still need to get a cast off. Or maybe you're one of the there's actually a not in this. Not in the PHB, but in I think Xanathar's, there's a holy origin for the sorcerer that allows them to cast healing spells. Maybe you need to cast a healing spell and to get someone back up and still want to do at least a little damage. That's what Quicken Spell is for. And like I said, most of the sorcerers take Quicken Spell. I personally don't think it's that overpowered to the point where I think you have to have Quicken Spell. But I understand why it's used so often. It sounds really appealing, and it really is. So Subtle Spell is one that I see really underutilized, mostly because I don't think a lot of the DMs think to do things like silence against a party in order to mess with their casters. Subtle Spell basically means you can cast a spell without somatic or verbal components. Everyone thinks of subtle spell as, again, in earlier editions, they had what was called a silence spell or something like that, which basically meant you could cast in silence. And so that's really what they think of. Well, if there's no silence around, then I don't need this. But it's somatic components that I really like. If you're in a situation where you need to cast a spell and you don't want people seeing, verbal components, whispering them, depending on your DM, he may allow you to whisper the verbal components instead of casting or speaking them aloud. But if it has somatic components, you have to move your hands to do it. With subtle spell, no, you don't. And if there's any spells, which there are, if you have any spells that don't have verbal components, you can subtle spell them and cast them without doing anything, because you don't need the verbal or somatic components to cast. And so, yeah, as long as you have the material component or you have your focus, you can just cast the spell, which is really cool and really interesting when you're playing. If you wanted to play kind of a more kind of secretive spy type sorcerer, which I think is a really cool kind of character, that subtle spell is a godsend for secret spell casting. And then the final one is called Twin Spell. And that's basically you can, if you cast a spell that targets only one creature, and this is written specifically so people aren't double casting fireball or something like that, and doesn't have a range of self, you can spend a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level to target a second creature in range with this same spell. And to be eligible, the spell must be incapable of targeting more than one creature at the spell's current level. So this basically means any single target spell. And they specifically mention Magic Missile and Scorching Ray as spells that theoretically could target extra creatures as spells that are ineligible for this. So it would have to be specific, just as single targets as spells. But it allows you to basically cast to two spells in this is the same term. Remember how Quicken Spell won't let you cast two leveled spells? Well, to Twin Spell will. You have to attack the different targets, but it can be massively useful. Something like the Finger of Death, cast using to Twin Spell, can be epic. Yeah, those are the meta magic. Again, at level two, or at level 3, you can only choose to two of them, but you get to two more as you level up all the way to 17 is when you get your fourth. So that's the actual class itself. There's literally no other abilities other than abilities to score improvement at 4, 8, every 4 levels. Any other abilities they get is done through their origin. And that's not uncommon with spellcasting classes, where they really won't get a ton of abilities. The thing that differentiates the class is the spells they choose. So let's they do have one more thing. They get Sorcerer's Restoration at level 20. Their level 20 ability. Basically, you regain 4 sorcery points whenever you finish a short rest. Again, that just makes them even better at being able to manipulate their magic, create new spell slots, things like that. So don't forget about level 20 like I almost did. So the two origins. The first one, Draconic Bloodline. Again, the innate magic from this comes from draconic magic that was mingled with your blood or that of your ancestors. And they mentioned specifically, it could be that a powerful sorcerer made a deal with a dragon. It could be, like I mentioned before, that way off in generations ago, one of your family members got busy with a dragon, but it's all about you have some sort of connection with a dragon, and it has given you this innate magical ability. Draconic Bloodline is an interesting one in the idea that it actually makes you a pretty tough spellcaster. The first thing you choose at level 1 when you choose it is you choose a draconic ancestor, which basically you choose a color of dragon and you get resistance to a damage type. So like black, you get resistance to acid. Gold, you get resistance to fire. Basically, the element associated with that dragon, you're now resistant to that kind of damage. You also can speak, read, and write Draconic. And whenever you make a charisma check when interacting with dragons, your proficiency bonus is doubled if it applies to that check. So you have this connection to dragons, and it makes you just kind of stronger to this is the same element that the dragon would be strong against. The other thing you get at the first level is what's called Draconic Resilience. At first level, your hit point maximum is increased by 1, and you get an additional 1 hit point every level. So it's kind of like a poor man's toughness feat, where you only get 1 extra hit point. But again, it makes the Draconic Sorcerer pretty beefy. Additionally, part of your skin are covered by a thin sheen of dragon-like scales. When you're not wearing armor, your AC is now the 13 plus your dex mod, which is effectively the same as wearing studded leather armor. So draconic sorcerers benefit a lot from dexterity, not only from giving them good dex saves, which is a magic thing. A lot of spells use dex saves, but it also makes them harder to hit. A draconic sorcerer actually can wade into battle and you use some of the kind of like melee focus spells and the touch basis spells and the things like that, because they can take a hit. They have more hit points. They have a higher armor class. You know, they're kind of buff for sorcerers. So you actually do see a lot of draconic sorcerers arming themselves a little bit better. They might actually use a magic weapon in addition to their magic. They might use more buff kind of spells on themselves instead of just casting from afar. And at low levels, since you have such limited spell slots at low levels, it can actually be really useful to be able to go toe-to-toe with some of the creatures. At higher levels, you have really good crazy powerful spells. So at 6th level, you get what's called Elemental Affinity, which basically means you cast a spell that deals the damage with the type that's associated with your ancestry. You get to add your charisma mod to it. This can be massively useful, specifically for cantrips. Let's say you do a red dragon. Everybody knows red dragons. You know they're for fire. When you get to level 6, normally your firebolt, if you chose that, would do 2d damage. With this, it now does 2d to 10 damage, plus your charisma mod, which is probably at that point a minimum of 3, probably plus 4 at that point. And I know that doesn't sound like a ton, but when you combine that with something like um, quickens this spell, because you're casting cantrips, you can cast two cantrips at a turn. And so that basically means by spending one sorcery point, uh, you can basically do 4d to 10 plus 8 damage at level 6. Um, so kind of planning your spells and the things like that as a draconic sorcerer um, benefits you a lot. Um, Oh, and I was 100% wrong about Dragon Ancestor. You actually don't get resistance to that damage type at 1. At 6th level, you can burn a sorcery point to get that damage type. Um, and the limitation of it is you can only add um, the charisma modifier to 1 damage roll. So if you cast like a Scorching Ray, which launches the 3 rays of fire, you can't add the charisma modifier to every single hit. But it's still extra to the damage. And again, if you could quicken Sis's spell, which you couldn't do with Sis, uh, um, Sis, wow, this is not working. You couldn't do a Scorching, or you could, but you'd have to cast a cantrip. Um, the second spell you cast would be in a new spell, so you could add that charisma damage again. So it sounded more complicated than it is. Basically, add charisma damage to your elemental spells that deal with your ancestor. At 14th level, and this I think is one of my favorite things, you get what's called dragon wings. Yeah. Uh, as a bonus action, you can have wings. This is sprout from your back, and you get a flying speed equal to your current speed, and they last until you dismiss them as a bonus action. You can't manifest wings while wearing armor, and any clothing that is not meant to accommodate them will get shredded. However, you already have effectively studded leather armor just from your skin. So there's not really a reason for a sorcerer to wear, dragon sorcerer to wear armor. And now you can fly. If you could combine the wings with spell sniper and distance spell, you have now become an angel of death. You get to fly in the air, fly up, 100 feet in the air to 200 feet in the air. Doesn't matter. With the distance spell and spell sniper, you can shoot people from 400 feet away, depending on the spell, obviously. So you can go to town with long range spells and stuff like that. Or, again, if you don't want to do this as a sniper route, the ability to fly over enemies and get to the exact enemy you need to cast a touch spell on is massively useful. And they don't go away. It's not like you can do it for 10 minutes. No, you just get dragon wings. And if you get bored with them, put them back in as a bonus action. Then when you need them again, put them back out. Like, it's just a cool ability. And the final thing you get for Draconic Bloodline is Draconic Presence, which is really a reference to something that all dragons have, where they can basically cast a fear kind of spell on anyone within range, and it's massively useful to the point where a lot of parties that go up against like an adult or ancient dragon generally want to have like a paladin or something like a hero's feast to make them immune to fear, because fear will wreck your party. This gives you a version of it that you can use. You burn 5 sorcery points, And you exude an aura of awe or fear to a distance of 60 feet. For a 1 minute or until you lose your concentration, each hostile creature that starts its turn in the aura must succeed on a wisdom save or be charmed or for frightened until the aura ends. A creature that succeeds at saving throws immune for 24 hours. This can be massively useful on a number of levels. Being able to charm hostile creatures can turn the tide of a fight. Now, charm is not like dominate, where you can make them, do whatever you want. But with a good silver tongue, they will trust you and treat you as if you are a close friend. And it generally won't break or anything unless you tell them to do something suicidal or something. So if you can charm people and then go, hey, look, this guy's trying to hurt me. I know he's your ally and everything, but look, he's trying to kill your friend. Stop him. Massively useful. And then fear is the fear. They have disadvantage on attack rolls as long as they can see you. They can't get any nearer to you. Like, it's a massively useful ability, and it extends for 60 feet in all directions, which is generally any fight you are going to be in. Your enemies are going to be within. That makes a 120-foot diameter circle. Generally, they're all going to be within 120 feet of you. So, yes, this is super useful. And that's Draconic Bloodline. Let's go to Wild Magic to try and get this in under an hour. Sorry. Just want to get all of this done so my next video can be about this as a Psychic Sorcerer. Wild Magic is based on the innate force of chaos that underlie the order of creation. Basically, chaos and randomness exist, and they have kind of infected you with chaos. They list a couple different ways you could get it. Like, you might have endured exposure to raw magic, perhaps through a planar portal leading to Limbo, one of the elemental planes, or the Far Realm. Or you could have been blessed by a fey being or a demon. Or it could just be, a random kind of mutation, X-Men style, of you being born. You were just born with like a seed of chaos. I personally like the idea of a fey creature kind of blessing you with wild magic, just because it's a very kind of fey trickster type thing to do. Oh, you want a blessing? Let me make random shit happen to you. Yeah, you have access to magic, but it's going to act weird all the time. Wild magic sorcerers are either loved or hated at the table because so many things can go right and so many things can go wrong. Right at the first level, they get what's called Wild Magic Surge. Basically, once per term, the DM can have you roll a d20 immediately after you cast a sorcerer spell of first level or higher. And if you roll a 1, you have to roll in the Wild Magic Surge table, which I will talk about and list off a couple of things on there. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because there are 100 different things on there. Yeah. And if it's a spell, you can use meta magic on it, or you use the same meta magic that you used on the spell you cast. And if it normally requires concentration, it doesn't. So this is something that's fun for the DM. Anytime a wild magic sorcerer casts a leveled spell, the DM can cause them to roll a d20, and every time they hit a 1, they have to a roll on the wild magic table, and crazy stuff happens. The other thing they get at first level is called the Tides of Chaos. Um, Basically, you can give yourself advantage on one attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. And you can only do this once per long rest. Unless anytime before you regain the use of this feature, the DM can have you roll on the Wild Magic Surge table immediately after you cast a sorcerer spell of first level or higher, and then you regain the use. So this particular thing, to Tides of Chaos, is really kind of a defining aspect of wild magic in general. With the idea that you can keep giving yourself advantage on attack rolls and stuff like that, and then every time you cast a leveled spell, the DM can make you roll on the wild magic table, giving you that ability back. And it turns into this kind of a back and forth between you and the DM, and it can be a ton of fun. Or it can be a bit of a nightmare. And because it gives the DM a little control over this, because he doesn't have to do it, it can be used as a way to add some chaos to the adventure to make things more interesting. Or if something is just going on to too long, or something like that, the DM can just not you use it for a while, and let the adventure get a little bit more normal and grounded. So it's not only a great tool for the player, it's also a great tool for the DM to just add that little bit more excitement. So it's the 6th level, you get what's called Bend Luck. Whenever a creature you can see makes an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can use your reaction to spend 2 sorcery points to roll a d4 and apply the number rolled as a bonus or penalty to the creature's roll. You can do it after the creature rolls, but before you see the results. So this is another really useful thing, and a really useful use of your sorcery points, which again, the defining feature of the class. This basically lets you either save your allies from damage, like if you've got a really bad guy coming up and swinging on an ally, and he just barely hits. Use Bend Luck, reduce his attack roll by a d4. Or again, you really need that save to fail, and you've already used him heightens this spell, and they're just a little bit too high. Bend Luck, bring it down. Because this isn't a meta magic option, you can actually use it on a spell you've already meta magicked. And you can get that thing that you need. So again, really useful. Controlled Chaos at level 14. Whenever you roll in the Wild Magic Surge table, you can roll to twice and use either in a number. Which again can be super useful. When I go over some of the things on that table, you guys will see that there's some really beneficial things, and there's some really bad stuff on there. Depending on the situation you're in, sometimes you want the bad stuff to happen, sometimes you want the good stuff to happen, and everything in between. So this just gives them a little bit more control on that chaos they're injecting into the game. And then 18th level, you get what's called a spell bombardment, which is basically when you roll damage for a spell and roll the highest possible number on any of the dice, choose one of those dice, roll it again, and add that number to damage. You can use this feature only once per turn. This actually mimics the old crit system from 4th edition, where it was basically in 4th edition, when you crit, you did maximum damage and then rolled your damage roll on it. So let's say you were supposed to do 2d10 damage and you rolled a crit, you would do 20 damage plus 2d10. And it was really fun to be able to do a max die and then add more. Well, this lets you do that. It only lets you do it on one die, But again, I could go back to Firebolt because it's such just a useful spell. You roll a Firebolt, you roll a D10, you roll a 10 on one of them, you get to add an additional D10 to the roll. So going from 4D10 to 5D10 damage can be pretty powerful, especially for a cantrip that you can always cast and you could quicken it. And yeah, it's just really, really useful. So that's a wild magic. Let's really quickly go over the things. I was wrong. There's not 100 things on here. There's 50. So each roll is one is to two numbers lead to a specific roll. So to give you examples, like if you roll a 13 or 14, you cast confusion centered on yourself. If you're in the middle of your party and you've just confused all of them, enjoy that. 65 to 66, up to the 3 creatures you choose within the 30 feet of you take 4d10 lightning damage. So that if if you're in combat and there's enough bad guys around, you've just done, in addition to whatever spell you cast, you've just done an extra for 4d10 damage to 3 more creatures. Really useful. If you're only surrounded by your friends, you cast a spell in like a city, and you accidentally roll that, you're going to either be hurting your friends or killing civilians. And then there's a phone. 75 to 76. You glow with a bright light in a 30-foot radius for the next minute. Any creature that ends its turn within 5 feet of you is blinded until the end of your next turn. You turn into a beacon that blinds people. And like I said, there's 50 different things on here. One of them lets you turn blue. Another one lets you cast levitate. One of them casts fireball. So this is centered on you. Like, it's a really interesting way to add a little more randomness and chance. Pardon my chair. Randomness and chance to a game that's already kind of built on the idea of luck and randomness is a part of the game. So yeah, that's the Sorcerer. Like I said, the kind of defining features of the Sorcerers, they are innate magic casters, and they are flexible casters. So they get extra spell slots. They can burn lower spell slots for higher ones or higher ones for lower ones. They can change how their spell works on the fly as they're casting them. And then depending on the bloodline, the origin that you choose, you can modify the character even more. I can tell you without a hint of a lie, a wild magic sorcerer and a draconic bloodline sorcerer play massively different, to the point where even if you have the same spells and the same meta magic options, your character is going to feel unique, which you can't really say about some of the other classes, like to 2 barbarians, even if one is a berserker and one is a totem barbarian. A lot of the time they're going to be doing the same things. But sorcerers are just so unique and have so many ways to kind of customize them that you really can have a very interesting creative party built around sorcerers, and having multiple sorcerers is not nearly as kind of handicapping as other things. Otherwise, that's going to be all for me today. As always, if you're enjoying this, I don't say this enough, but if you are enjoying this stuff, please subscribe to the channel. Check out my Twitch channel if you want to see me doing live stuff. I have a podcast I host, and I run D&D on Wednesday nights on my Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/TrainerJody. And I run every other Saturday, I run an RPG on Zelda Universe. It's twitch.tv/Zelda Universe TV. They're a blast. Please check them out. Hit a, push a like on the video, turn notifications on, all that YouTuber stuff. And again, that's all for me today. I'll see you guys in the next time. All right? Bye-bye.